here today. I'm doing a 4-part cooking video. The reason I say 4 parts is because each element of this meal is a dish in itself. I'm going to separate all of them. Like, I'm going to discuss with you the ingredients that I'm going to be using in each dish. Then I'm going to prep each dish. Then each dish is going to get set aside. Then everything's going to come together near the end time and it's all going to get cooked. The 4 dishes that we're doing today are my mother's evolved meatloaf. This is not a big brick of minced meat swimming in a pool of grease. I don't do that shit. Mine is lighter than that and way tastier and doesn't lay heavy on your stomach, but it still sticks to your ribs, you know. It keeps you full. I like to tuck a secret tunnel of cheese down my meatloaf because, as you probably know by now, everybody in this house is nuts about cheese. Paul came up with the idea recently of tucking Baby Bell type shaped cheeses. And these were infused with Marmite inside his burgers that we make sometimes. We make these big home style burgers. And I like my burgers in gravy with mushrooms and onions served over mash. And the Marmite inside the burgers was awesome. So I thought, with the formed cheese and not grated like I usually use or cubed. And this, I just saw this today and picked it up, and we'll see if we like it. If I don't like it, I'll use some real cheddar or something like that. I think these are real. They're cheddar cheese, yeah. But they're just, you know, the cheese strings. And the reason I bought them like cheese strings is because they're going to be easier for me, easier than grated cheese to tuck inside my secret tunnel, inside my meatloaf. And that's something that I do. It's a quirk of mine. Not everybody does it. Probably not many people do it, but who cares? I like making a good sized meatloaf. Some flakes from lunchtime. And my mama's secret was to not use beef and pork or all beef or all pork because they're heavy meats and they're fatty meats. So we don't find typically a lot over here in England minced chicken. I wish we could, but we don't. But I was able to get a hold of turkey thigh mince. There's breast mince as well, but it cost plenty. So what I did was I got, because like I say, I make meatloaf, and I'm going to show you how to transform that meatloaf when it's left over, if it doesn't get all gobbled up in sandwiches with mustard and white bread, which is really good and which I adored when I was a kid. If it doesn't all get gobbled up before you have a chance to use it, after it's cooled, you can cut it into chunks and transform it into a delicious chili. And I'm going to show you how to do that. But anyway, this is a pound of 12% fat beef mince. 12% is pretty good. It's not the lowest you can get. But then again, if you get the lowest you can get, it's probably going to be pretty low in taste as well. You don't want to go too low with your fats and your meats when you're making things like this because, I'm sorry, but fat is a source of a lot of flavor in a meat. That's a pound of that. And now here's turkey thigh mince, and they're only 250 grams each. So I asked Paul, could we get 2? So that's 2 pounds, and that's about what I do when I do meatloaf. I don't do a little meatloaf. I don't want to screw with that. That's not worth my time. I want some leftovers when I do my meatloaf. So I've got a pound of turkey thigh mince and a pound of 12% fat beef mince. I'm using the Holy Trinity today, cut very small. Holy Trinity way down, deep south, being celery, onion, and bell pepper. I won't be using all of these. I can think of something great to use some of these for. Stuffed with primula. Yum, yum. Used to be pimento cheese back where I'm from, but we don't have that here. Anyway, I'll probably use maybe 3 or 4 of these in a small dice. 1 bell pepper, very small dice. 1 medium-sized red onion, again, small dice, 2 fat eggs, all of them, not just the whites, crackers. Some people use breadcrumbs. My mom used saltine crackers. I'm using Tuck, which tastes a bit like Ritz from the States. So get you a pack of Ritz if that's what you want to use. If you want to use saltines, get them. And you're just going to crumble up about 10 or so in the thing. But I'll show you how to do that. And that stretches your meat like they used to do in the old days. And it makes it lighter in texture as well. Now, I don't always just put a bunch of meat together, obviously. I want flavor. And these are all of my flavoring and spice components I myself is going to be using today. Now, if all you've got is salt and pepper in your house, fine. You're going to need something to glaze your meatloaf with. You could use ketchup in a pinch. But my mother used to use, I think, tomato paste. And I think she used it pretty much straight out of the can. I'm using tomato paste today, but I'm going to pimp that shit up because that's how I roll. But I like a little bit of heat, so I'm bringing in my sriracha. I'm sure you probably know what that is. It's delicious. It's an Asian chili garlic sauce. This one's extra hot, but I don't think it's extra hot. Paul probably would disagree. There's some whole grain mustard in this tub. I got it for the tub because it's just so cute. But I'm going to use some of that mustard in my meatloaf glaze. I like to make my own meatloaf glazes. I am still using my mom's old standby puree paste. Same thing. It's in a tube. This was cheap, about 59p. I won't use all of it, but I will make my glaze from it. Ketchup. I told you this sauce is great up in your cabinet, and you don't just make all kinds of oriental dishes with it. This is going in our meatloaf glaze. Now, this is probably going to go into the meatloaf itself. Why? Because Worcestershire and beef need each other. Like yin and yang, black and white. It just makes beef taste phenomenal. Then there's my Himalayan pink salt. Look at that. I got a new one. Oh my God. Well, the last one lasted me for months, so I'm expecting this one to do the same. Cracked black pepper. Garlic granules, because we love garlic and we smell. Tarragon, just because that's what I chose today. It's a nice, sweet, mild herb. I'm going to just crumble it up. And some chives, which we'll be needing soon. I'm going to show you now how to put together this meatloaf. And then we're going to put it aside and move on to the next dish. But let's get started on meatloaf. Or as my dad used to say, don't let your meatloaf. See ya. All right. We're going in to make what appears to be the glaze for the meatloaf. You always need to top your meatloaf. It gives it a tasty outer surface, and I'm frustrated with myself. This is tomato paste, and it keeps it moist for you, and you know, as it's cooking, and it gives it a lovely appearance. I've put probably 2 heaping tablespoons of just plain old tomato paste in there out of a tube, and 1 heaping tablespoon of that's just grain mustard. Throw any mustard that you got in the house in there. Dijon would work. Regular old Sunshine American style mustard would work. This is my ketchup mayonnaise. Ketchup is so useful in so many things. 2 glugs of ketchup mayonnaise, which is dark, thick, treacly, sweet soy. Now for some sriracha. We love sriracha in this house. It gives this sauce a bit of a kick. 2 tablespoons of that, or 2 nice big squirts, as it were. This is Worcestershire. Worcestershire should be with you anytime you're working, as far as I'm concerned, with beef. Worcestershire and beef go together like salt and pepper. Now I'm mixing everything around, making sure that it's all blended. Just using a bit of elbow grease. Get some bicep action going there, ain't I? I need it. It's so strange watching yourself. Wiggle, 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 wiggle. She's belly dancing. Okay. Now I've got my sauce or my glaze ready. I'm going to start working on the body of the meatloaf part. Now, if you've had meatloaf that was swimming in grease and was like a brick of meat and probably was, in fact, a brick of meat, you didn't have meatloaf. You may have thought you were having meatloaf at the time, especially if it was labeled that, but meatloaf isn't like that. And we'll put in our beef, and that was a nice big pack of beef, and it was about 1.5 pounds, and we put in 1/2 pound of turkey. That was my mama's secret. Don't put all beef and don't put all pork. Some people put pork. They mix pork and beef and put meatloaf. It makes a very heavy meatloaf. I don't like mine that heavy. I'm putting in a couple more tablespoons in the body of the meatloaf itself of tomato paste. This lightens it. It gives it flavor, and it just gives it a punch. Now my holy trinity is going in there. My very small diced 1 bell pepper, onion, red onion, and some stalks of celery. All of these things serve to lighten this loaf, to stretch it out, to make it healthier and tastier, and just make it an all-round better meatloaf. 2 big fat eggs going in there, yolk and all. Don't worry about mixing after everything you add, because you're going to get your hand in there. That's what I want you to do. I'm going off to hobble somewhere like a hobbit. You take a drag. I think that hurt from the look on my face. These are Tuck crackers. Tucks are similar to Ritz in America. I liked using Tucks. They were easier to break up than saltines, or as we call them here, cream crackers. And I put about 12 maybe, and I'm just breaking them up as finely as I can. Now, my mother always used crackers instead of breadcrumbs. Some people use breadcrumbs to stretch out and lighten the loaf even further. I prefer the cracker crumbs. I think they're tastier, they have a better texture, I just like them. Plus they're easy. We've always got, most everybody's got some kind of cracker in their cabinet, so why not put it to use? Don't go out buying breadcrumbs special. If you were in a pinch, you could take a couple of pieces of bread and let them sit out to dry a bit on the countertop, or even toast them, and then crumble them down as fine as you can with your hands. My garlic powder is going in now, because we're wanting to put our seasonings in to give the meatloaf lots of nice flavor. And my ubiquitous cracked fresh black pepper. I always use it because it is essential. It is one of the gods of seasoning in the kitchen as far as we're concerned. And as you can see, I'm working them biceps because, damn, it's not a professional grinder coming from Poundland for a pound, but it's good, and that's what matters. Chives are going in now, and I put them in my hand, about a teaspoon. Why do I do this? Because if you have the warmth and the friction of your hands running through that to break it down a bit, it's going to release the oils, and that's important in these that have been sitting around for a while in the bottles, these herbs. Now I believe it's tarragon, is going in there, or it may be chervil. Just use herbs that you like. Yeah, tarragon. And that's a teaspoon as well, and I'm just running it through my hands and breaking it up. Just roll your hands back and forth like you're rubbing your hands together. Ah, good shit. And then we're going in with our rock salt again. You're going to want to add plenty of salt. There's a lot of meat in there and other stuff, and it needs your help. So let's help it and give it a flavor boost. Grind in a good amount of salt. And don't be scared to use a good amount of salt because there's not as much as you think. This food acts like a sponge. Remember that rule I told you about Worcestershire? Well, a couple of big, liberal splash all over Worcestershire is going to wake up the flavors inside that minced beef. And it doesn't hurt the turkey mince either. Now I'm going in with my clean washed hands and I'm using them for what God gave them to me for. Squeeze it, work the meatloaf. Get your hands in there and really massage it and turn it and put your hand underneath and bring the bottom around and just keep working it for about 5 minutes, making sure that the meat is nice and soft and everything is incorporated evenly, because you don't want it breaking up while it's cooking, and you don't want all the flavors mixed up. You want it evenly distributed. And this also helps the overall taste, because while it's going to be sitting before we cook it, the flavors are going to be maturing and marrying and developing and having themselves a good old conjugational visit inside the fridge with each other. I don't know what me and Paul are discussing here, but it must be pretty damn important. Now, there's my secret tunnel, meatloaf tunnel cheese. I would say that it is not the best cheese I've ever chosen. I did it on a whim. I always put a secret tunnel of cheese down my meatloaf. It's lovely. I'm going to go wash my hands, I think, because they're all greasy. And he's showing you how well that's been kneaded. It's sort of like kneading bread dough if you're going to be making a homemade loaf of bread. My big Pyrex is coming down now, and my garlic butter. This is more for keeping the Pyrex from making everything. You can see I really like garlic, and I like garlic butter because, yeah, I could, like, you know, scoop a bit of it out and just eat it. I love garlic. All of us do. We stink. I'm making sure all that's round everywhere, and that keeps your food from sticking and burning quite so bad on your Pyrex, because your meatloaf's going to be in there for a while. Now watch as I take the meatloaf in its vessel that it's going to be in. It's been kneaded, but I'm still shaping it now. And I'm going to shape it into roughly, I suppose, almost like a loaf of bread shape. I'm patting it. I'm pressing. I don't know what the hell it is I'm talking about there, but I'm getting excited over something. Doesn't take much to excite me, though, so it's nothing new. And I'm just making a nice shape. You don't want like it for it to be really humongous at one end and small at the other, because then it won't cook evenly. So just an oblong shape, kind of like a small loaf of bread, and just press it together and make it look nice and smooth, and make sure that there's no parts breaking away or big cracks in it. Sort of like sculpting, I suppose. And it also makes for a good presentation, by the way. The dish looks pretty. It looks pretty when it comes out of the oven. If you have guests, they'll think it looks nice, you know. And now I'm taking my finger and I'm just poking the meatloaf down the middle. I think I'm joking around at the moment as to what this is reminding me of. Look at my finger. Look at the meatloaf. Have you got any clues as where my head is? I'll give you a hint. In the gutter. So like I said, this is string cheese, and I'm fitting it in my tunnel. My tunnel does not go all the way down to the bottom. It's just dredged in there like a trench. I'm breaking the cheese up for the end because it's too long. I will say that this cheese, it was nice inside, but I think it was a bit watery when it I'm not saying the meatloaf didn't turn out good. Use whatever you've got. But if you're going to go out and get some cheese for the occasion, it doesn't matter if you grate it or you don't. I think what I'm trying to say is some higher quality, real cheese, if you can get it, like, pieces of cheddar would be great down there. And that's usually what I use, but that's what I had to hand, and I used it. Now, after that, you're just going to press your trench back down over your secret cheese tunnel. And you may see a bit of cheese come out during the baking process, just a little bit gooey ooze out, which makes it look even yummier and more delicious. And then when you slice it, of course, you can see it coming away, and anybody that loves cheese will be like, hell yeah! Because we all know, cheese lovers of the world know that cheese makes everything better. And yes, even sweets. I mean, cheesecake, think about it. I'm coming in with my glaze now, which I told you I made. If you didn't have all those ingredients, no big deal. If all you got's tomato paste, kick it up a notch by putting some black pepper in it, or herb, or minced garlic, clove, or make up your own crap. You want it a bit spicy? Put in some sriracha, some chili oil. It's just nice to... I'm getting my groove on now. I'm painting, yeah, and I'm just laying down in an even layer all over the meatloaf. It makes it look nice, it helps it keep together, and it adds lots of flavor, and it can stand up to long cooking. It will go very dark, this glaze, but do not worry about it, not even if it starts to look a bit burnt. It tastes freaking delicious. So don't worry about if it starts going dark. Now my meatloaf is all ready. I'm just wiping some stuff off of the side there, more for presentation's sake than anything. Stage 2, potatoes Dauphinois, or au gratin, or scalloped, however you want to call it. I'm going to attempt to try to make them on my own today. Growing up, my mom used au gratin potatoes out of a box. Yeah, they were yummy. They had little chips of rock-hard dehydrated potatoes in them, and a little sachet of flavored powder that made a sauce. And I think we used to put them in a Pyrex like that. Butter, boiling water, milk, and you baked them. And they made a lovely side dish. My mom, that was, I guess, all she had the energy and the time for back then. Trying to please my dad and everything with all the meals she cooked. But I'm going to try to do them from scratch. So I've got my Maris Pipers here. I'm probably going to use most of this bag. We'll just see how it goes. I'm going to peel them. I'm going to slice them as thin as I can. I'm a cat-handed cow, so we'll just see how thin I'm able to get them. I'm going to grease that just like I did. You saw me line the meatloaf Pyrex pan, the baking pan, with some garlic butter. And I'm going to use the same garlic butter because it just is a nice flavor to add to the dish, and works just as well as any other butter. It's actually easier because it's been whipped, so it's easy to work with, easy to spread. I'm going to spread that on here. I might even add a few dollops to the top. We'll just see how it goes. And I wanted Gruyere, and when we found Gruyere, it was like nearly 4 pounds for a little slab of it, about that thin. I chose this Edam wedge, and I'm going to grate that up and put it in there. And I cannot tolerate, physically, cream, either single or double, and I do poorly even with milk. So I'm trying something that I seem to be able to handle, and that's creme fraiche. It's really tasty. I'm going to work with that. And just some salt and pepper. I'm keeping the seasonings pretty basic. Oh, I think I might throw in a thinly sliced red onion in between these layers of potatoes, just for a bit of extra taste. So let's get started with those now. See you then. Alright, getting on with what I thought was the most fantabulous part of the evening's dishes. Potatoes gratin, scalloped potatoes, or potatoes Dauphinois. However you want to call it, it's more or less the same dish. And damn, it's good. If If you like potatoes and you like cheese, you'll freaking love this. There's my garlic butter greased Pyrex. There is my Edam all grated up. There's my creme fraiche tub, my cracked black pepper, my rock salt, my as thinly as my cack-handed butt could slice 'em potatoes, a bag, and 1 thinly sliced red onion. Now when you lay the potato slices down in the Pyrex, try to lay them down in rows and try to overlap the edges. The reason that you're doing this is because A, it looks really pretty, and B, it makes the finished product much easier to serve. If it's all just tossed in there, it's going to make a big fat mess when you try to cut it and scoop it out. Whereas this, if you cut it after you let it rest for about 5 to 10 minutes, which is what you should do, and with your meatloaf as well, anytime you cook really any large piece of meat, it's good to let the meat rest for about 10 minutes. All the loose juices draw back in and it facilitates easier slicing. I'm just working my way down. As you can see, Paul has sped me up, Roadrunner status. And I'm just laying the potato slices down. They're not perfect. You know, it may not be as beautiful as Gordon Ramsay's or whoever that's more of an artist in the kitchen, but just, you know, try to lay them down and overlap the edges as you go, like shingles on a roof, I suppose. I'm tucking a few around the sides to hold everything in, and because there are just a lot of potatoes here, but I can tell you that it was not too many potatoes. It was a goodly amount. The average size bag of, I think it was Maris Piper I used. And I'm just laying them around the side there. And I'm going to be coming in with my first layer of sauce. Now, I got to tell you, with the creme fraiche, and I'm put liberal rock salt and cracked black pepper before you put your creme fraiche mix. The creme fraiche I don't work with that often. It is beautiful. It's delicious. It's very much like sour cream. It has an extremely thick consistency. So what I had to do to make the creme fraiche loosen a bit so that I could dollop it on and spread it down is I put in a knob of my garlic butter, a small knob, not huge, and I'd say probably maybe 1/3 of a cup of milk. And what Paul did was he just mic'd it for about 30 or 40 seconds for me. And as you can see, it loosened the creme fraiche up and is going to make it easier for me to spread. I've also laid some of my onion down there, as you can see. You can do it on top of the creme fraiche, or you can do the way that I'm doing it. It doesn't really matter as long as you do it in layers. And I'm just dolloping on about half of the creme fraiche mix. And then I do something a tad unconventional after this, because I don't want to get up to screw around with some other kind of, you know, thing to spread it on. I just took a slice of potato and just work it into all the nooks and crannies and spread it out to the edges. You'll see what I'm doing. I'm looking around for something to spread it with. And then the penny drops. Nah. And there I go. The F it. Let's just use this slice of potato. And it worked. And I didn't get anything dirty and make something else to wash, because believe me, there was enough to wash. But I am one of these kind of people. I wash as I go. Oh, you remember looking at my poor mama after all the meals she cooked for us and the dad through all the years, and she used to be sweating in that very hot North Carolinian kitchen. And in the middle of summer trying to make fried chicken and shit, she'd be raining sweat, and I'd be thinking to myself, when the meal was finished and we all just walked off, she was left there with a pile of dishes. F that shit. I wash dishes as I go along, It makes it easier. You have less work then at the end of the meal if you keep things clean as you go. Just a little tip from my house to yours. Now I pretty much got that mixed up as good as I can, and half of the Edam or Gouda, if you wanted to use it, is going on here now. Just spread it as nice and even as you can. Take your time is the best way, I guess, to say it. Bring it all the way out to the edges so that every bit of this potato dish gets some goodie, because the cheese is what makes this dish so beautiful. And I would not skimp when it comes to the cheese, as I don't use some vegetable oil American cheese slice crap. Use real cheese. You could use cheddar if that's what you love, but I love to try different things, and the Edam was absolutely beautiful, and Gouda is good too, or Gouda, or whatever the hell you call it. And you're gonna use, like I did with the potato, and I did with the onion, and I did with the creme fraiche, everything's about halfsies. So we put half of everything, and then we're gonna repeat everything right up to the top. So you'll need a good sized Pyrex for this. Thank goodness I had 2 of them, but that day I ended up needing 3 and only had 2. But you make do. Again, I'm repeating the layers, overlapping like shingles, like scales on a fish. Pardon. Not so much on the sides this time, I don't think. And I'm just trying to cover so that there's no open spots, and potato covering everything. I don't think I ended up using every last slice of potato, almost all of it, but you just use what you need to make it look nice. Try to use what you can, and then if there's a bit left over, you could either save it to do something with or chuck it. We don't tend to chuck food very often in this house, but I did throw away the last few slices because I didn't have a use for them. Now I'm getting all that creme fraiche mix out and using a potato slice again as my spreader. Just kind of patting it down and spreading it around and in all the nooks and crannies. Because as it bakes, those potatoes are going to suck that stuff up, and it's going to make them absolutely freaking delicious. Some more pretty red onion slices going on. I love red onion. It has a taste and a sweetness about it that I just love, and I almost always pick red over yellow or white. We don't have Vidalias here, but if we did, I'd use them. They're beautiful. My rock salt's going on now. Damn, I wish I could move that fast in real life. Look at me go. Damn. Okay, cheese going on. And we added a touch. Paul suggested it, and I agreed, that are what you call durkey, or they used to be called durkey in America. We just call them fried onions here. You'll find them in the salad dressing section of your store. You know, where bottled salad dressings are. Little packages of crumbled fried onion. Put a couple of handfuls over the top. If you had a packet of cheese and onion crisps or chips in America, you had some potato chips, a little packet, you could crumble them finely over the top and it would be delicious. I've seen breadcrumbs. I'm not impressed, but that's up to you. But this is how I like to top it. And that is pretty much now ready.